Welcome to Overcome Yourself, the podcast, where we rewrite stories, shift mindsets, and make dreams come true. I'm your host, Nicole Tuxbury. Let's get into today's episode. Hello there, and welcome back to the next episode of Overcome Yourself, the podcast. As you know, my name is Nicole, and I'm so excited to be here today across the globe. I didn't even ask you where you were, but across the globe, because it's morning for you, it's nighttime for me. But let's welcome Inna. And Inna, please introduce yourself. You're a best-selling author. You do so many amazing things. So take it away and tell us a little bit about who you are, where you are, and who you help.
Hi, Nicole. Thank you. I'm actually in Australia at the moment. So yes, across the world, I help people to really connect to their own bodies, listen to the language of the body, and then work with their body in a loving way to transform everything from health issues to trauma to stuckness to just lack of clarity in their life and not knowing what to do. So just to, who am I? What am I here for? What am I about? Understanding themselves and really reclaiming, I guess, their own sense of self, their sense of strength, who they want to show up as in life, really, so that they would love themselves.
That is amazing. That's beautiful. Um, and for the audience out there who might not be familiar, can you tell me what you mean by listening to your body? Can you tell us a little bit about what that might look like? Because, I know like my knees might creak sometimes, when you bend down, but I don't think that's what you mean in this case.
Well, sort of. I mean, the body's always communicating. So essentially we live inside our own bodies. So whenever we have pain, whenever we have pleasure, whenever we have feelings of I've woken up and I'm so excited, or I feel depressed, I feel anxious, that is your body speaking, right? So your body's constantly saying to you, and I'm going to say body, and soul together, speaking to you to say, essentially, you're on the right path. Your intuition, your inner self is saying, hey, you're moving in the right direction, or it is saying, no, you're not. And when we have pain, when we have diseases, and obviously I wrote about this in The Secret Language of Your Body, which is really about, if we had to break the body down into different parts and we had to go, actually, my body's really logical and wise. What would it be saying to me? And so I say to people, if we were to do it really quickly and we're looking at the head area, well, we all know that the head is about thinking, concentration, making decisions, focus, right? So when that area starts to break down, it is logical to start to think, well, what kind of thought patterns am I having? What kind of experiences? What are the feelings that would create explosions inside of my head? And often it's anger, it's, feeling overwhelm, feeling overload that affects the nervous system, affects our head and brain, and makes us have headaches and all sorts of things that show up. If we're looking at the eyes are all about, what am I seeing? And often, I was actually talking to somebody, I do these VIP sessions at the moment. It's a new thing that I've started where, people come and they'll ask a question about their health, and I tune into them and give them a bit of an insight. And essentially, so this lady was saying, in the right eye, she had one condition, in the left eye, another condition. And I was saying, like, for instance, I know that the left and the right sides of the body tell you a different story. And the right side, from all my 25 years of experience, is always connected to purpose, moving forward, what you're going to see in the future, as well as the masculine people in your life and the experiences you've had. And of course, as I was exploring it with this lady, She lost her husband several years ago, and they had a very difficult, painful, traumatic relationship. And so her eye became hardened, and it was like, and at the same time I'm saying, well, what can you see in the future? And she's not quite seeing clarity in the future. So the eyes are about what are you seeing, and then the left eye is all about the feminine side, and this is the part of you that goes, well, how do I see myself really on the deepest level? What's really going on within me? And so each part of the body starts to tell you this story, and and then you start to connect it with your life, and you start to go, all right, so these things happened to me, and maybe I didn't know. I didn't, people can say I didn't. It happened, right? I was the victim of something that happened to me. And, I kind of go, well, potentially, maybe so. But to heal, you cannot be a victim. You actually have to take responsibility for what can you do about it now and step one is understanding the body, right? And we have the throat about communication. We all know this stuff, like that are the basics. We have the neck. We say this person's a pain in the neck. We know it's relationship related, even if we don't think about it. The heart is like, is all about like, is my heart inner? Do I love you? Blah, blah. So we start to understand this.
That is so cool. You know, I've heard this saying, the body remembers. And so we store a lot of the stuff that happens to us, especially when we don't deal with it, right? We say it has to go somewhere. And so what does that mean, right? And I think that that's kind of what you're explaining, is that different things get stuck in different places. And it's really cool how the body lets us know when something's wrong. It's not to annoy us, right? Because a lot of times we think of pain and you're like, this sucks. Oh my God, this is so annoying. I wish I didn't have this. But that lets us know that something's wrong, and then we have the ability to fix it, right? Then something hurts, and then we can do something to make it not hurt anymore. And so I think that this is a little bit deeper than that, obviously. But it makes a lot of sense, and it's kind of interesting. It kind of makes you think, oh, like, what's going on with
Mhm.
my eyes? Like, have I noticed anything? And could it relate back to that? So that's kind of cool. Can you tell us a little bit about the story of how you came on this? Like, how did you overcome yourself to get to the point of writing your book and doing these VIP sessions? Because I'm
Mhm.
sure that there's a really cool story behind this, because this is such an interesting concept.
Well, I grew up like most people having no clue, essentially, I'm going to say. And just, going to the doctors and going with that attitude of somebody else knows the story, knows my body. I know nothing. They're going to fix me. And so after years and years of this kind of round and round in circle, I ended up with psoriasis, anxiety, with depression, I'm going to say, with digestive issues. In particular, the thing that was really bad was my back pain. So psoriasis was very frustrating and annoying, because I had it all over my
Mhm.
elbows, all over my knees. Anybody who's had a skin condition like that, it's not a pleasant experience. And so I was just running from one specialist to another to another. And then when I was about 18, I met my at that time my partner or husband, ex-husband now, but and at the time he was a lot older than me, and he was really open to um alternative health. And so he started introducing it to me and taking me to different alternative practitioners. And I ended up going to see this chiropractor for about a year, probably a bit over a year, and who worked on the nervous system. And so I was seeing him 3 times a week, and then somebody else, 2 other times a week. So I literally felt like I was my full time job, but all my visits to these people came with zero participation. And so eventually, by the time I was 20, I was at my lowest point. I had actually lost a child. I didn't know that that even happened to people my age at the time. And I was, really, really down in a very stuck, dark place. And after seeing him for a while, he could see where I was doing, where I was coming from. And so one day I wake up and I was just in agony. And I think we often have those moments where we really have to shift and take responsibility for something. And I went to his office as usual. And this time he came out of, his treatment room, and he looked at me and he said, "Hey, obviously, like, you're really stuck. Your body's stuck." And I was like, "I know that part. What are you gonna do about fixing it, basically?" And I think me saying that just triggered something in him, because he was very quiet for a while, and he's a very chilled type of person, very relaxed. And he looked a little strange for a moment, and then he said, "Nothing." And I said, "What do you mean nothing?" And he said, "Well, your body wants to be stuck, go home." And I was so angry with him saying this at that time. But on the way home, all sorts of things came up for me. I had at that time been studying linguistics and literature, and had I want to write, I want to be an author. So it kind of made sense to me to think about this in terms of a language. It's like, it's a language I don't understand. I don't consciously want to be sick. Otherwise, I wouldn't be going and spending so much money and running from one practitioner to another. But how is my body wanting to be sick? It doesn't make logical sense to me, except that, my head and body are not connected in some way. And so, as I was thinking about all of this, I really started to focus on something that I had never done, which was, I'm going to heal myself, and I'm going to align, I'm going to say, my thinking, which is my head, and then my feeling, which is my heart area, and my solar plexus, to my will, which is, kind of around your hip area and legs. Like, all of me is going to be aligned to this healing that I don't know how to do. And so I went home and I literally went through this very profound process of connecting to my body. So I had my hands on my back. I was breathing into that part of my body. So I was creating this nervous system connection that I was already aware of how to do from acting classes also that I was doing, and just going to so many practitioners. And I was at the same time, I it occurred to me, and this was a painful point, that I had not really, really asked for higher help in this scenario. And I just didn't know where I sat with it after losing this child, and in some ways blaming, kind of the whole spiritual, it's like, I trusted you and you didn't deliver. Like, what's wrong with me? And all sorts of stuff that I was going through at the time. But I just went, okay, for this one time, if there is something divine out there, then help me now. And I felt this warmth go through my body. So I thought, okay, something's happening. And then at the same time, for whatever crazy reason, it occurred to me that I wonder what my back would look like. Just this thought, and expecting nothing. Within moments, I just felt like there's a light switch that went on, and I could see my back. Like, I had this X-ray vision. And so after my initial fright, I went, okay, why do I have this? And I started to have kind of this visual insight of, they were memory, but with insight, I'm going to say. So it wasn't completely just memory that showed up in terms of how the body speaks. So I saw myself coming to Australia. Before I came to Australia, I was living in Eastern Europe, and I also lived in Italy for a while. And I was one of those children who everybody kind of loved, I'm going to say. And except when I decided that I didn't care if they loved me. But I was very, you know, expressive and fun and enjoyed life. And when I came to Australia and I didn't know one word of English, I was bullied and I was I became very internalized, and I felt one of the things that was very clear was that I was very, very uncomfortable in my skin. And this is where I had all this psoriasis that showed up. And the other thing that was very, very clear was that I just didn't feel supported. My parents could do so much, but as I got older, I went to a different school, and then at this particular school, I felt like I was looked down upon because I didn't come from a rich family. And there was all sorts of things that were going on at home as well with my parents and their own conflict that they were having, that I just did not feel that support in my life at the time. And so back is all about that support. So it was obvious to me of how it broke down. And then, I also saw that my grandparents had gone through massive loss and trauma, and it really honed in on my loss that I had experienced. And I definitely noticed that my digestive system became much worse after I lost this child. And so I could see all these links and connections, and I felt through it and I cried. And essentially, I fell asleep. And the next day, when I woke up, about 70% of the pain was gone. And I felt like something had unwound inside of me that had been wound up for over 10 years. And I thought to myself, okay, something's happened. And by nature, I'm a big skeptic. I'm just skeptical of everything. And so I'm that person who likes everything to be more scientific than science is. Like, I want details, right? Like minute details to understand how things work. And so for the next several weeks, I just really kept connecting and journaling and trying to link pieces together. And by the end of those 3 weeks, things made so much more sense to me about my own family, ancestry, um, and the parts of my body that were giving me the most issues. So my back pain disappeared, and I've never had back pain since, unless, I'm just doing something like standing on high heels for 10 hours. Then, of course, I'm going to have something like that's going to just happen. But in general, I've never really had back pain like that. And, psoriasis disappeared. My anxiety went down and depression kind of dissolved. My desire to die dissolved, and my desire to live kind of awakened and explore and understand things. And I then realized the digestive system took a lot longer. And I always say, because people need to understand that I still have to be quite aware of certain food groups that just don't work for me in my body. And I also realized that I could see into people's bodies, and that's kind of how the whole Secret Language of Your Body book came about, because I was always going to write. It's just what I thought I was going to write fiction. I was going to be this big fiction author. And I started kind of, with healing, working around just helping my family. I just really, really wanted to help my grandparents. And then I started learning and learning and learning. And, I still am always learning. And eventually I started seeing a lot of clients, and I saw patterns that were very, very connected, where the wisdom of the body was so obvious to me, but not obvious to most people. And I thought, if I write a book about it with detailed processes where people can use their whole body, and whether they're more emotional or more intellectual or more, they like to move their body more, they're more visual. I'm just going to put it all in each process so that whatever ability you have, you can still use the processes to help yourself. And so that's kind of how it came about.
That is amazing. And we can learn more about this in your book, right? So can you tell us a little bit about your book?
Yeah, so the secret language of your body is broken down into several different sections. And the first section is the one that people don't look at, and the one that's the most important to look at, which is explaining why the processes are laid out exactly how they are and how to use them properly, as well as we're focusing on different principles in terms of life. And I give you a process of how can you start to connect to your body and tune in and ask questions like I did. What are the actual steps to it? And ideally, what I want is for people to connect and befriend their own bodies and have a relationship with them and a communication, as opposed to only look at what I wrote. But that is the desire that I have. But the first section after that introductory section is about all the body parts, because I figured if you're going to have illness, if you're going to have issues in your body, it's going to be in some part of the body, and or several. So I I explore what are the thought patterns, belief systems, potential action steps, experiences that may break that particular part of your body down. What are the things that cause it to break down? But at the same time, I also talk about, what can you do to help, and what can you do on different levels, including energetic level of color. And there's a whole section on color. And what can you do in terms of an emotional level and understanding your emotions? And there's a whole section in the book on emotions. The systems of the body, because sometimes you've got to work on the whole system, like the lymphatic system or the immune system. What are they about? And and what kind of, what organs maybe you need to explore. And so essentially the book is kind of like a guide. Some people say it's their Bible, which is really nice, but I heard that thousands of times, um, because it helps them to really understand and connect and have much more wisdom in terms of their body, and an ability to start to transform ailments. And there's a whole section
That
on
is
ailments that I forgot to mention. That,
almond.
yeah, different diseases that and why we
Yep.
have them. Yeah, yeah.
Cool. Well, it sounds very in-depth, and I'll definitely be checking it out. But before we go, you did mention that you had a gift for the audience, so can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So at the moment, for probably for a short time, I've recorded several masterclasses, but I'm going to say that they are much more like mini workshops. And usually, we would charge quite at least, $100 or something like that for people to come to something like that. But at the moment, we have them for free, and there's different topics. But what I'm going to say is that a great way to connect is to go to my website. And for now, on my website, look up masterclasses, or which is innaseagall.com, or just go innaseagall.com/masterclass, and give yourself 4 hours of time with a journal. There is a usually at least, depends on the masterclass you choose, but usually there's at least two, sometimes three really powerful processes. And people often say, "Oh my God, I didn't think it would be this deep or this powerful." And often people, have given us incredible feedback of going, just from doing this masterclass, or depends on which one you choose, but all of them have processes. They go, the pain that I've had for so long has disappeared, or the clarity that I need all of a sudden came to me, or the understanding of my body, or the emotion that I've been holding on to. So really encourage you to, self-love to me is making time for yourself.
That is amazing. That sounds really, really cool. So be sure to check that out. And all of those links will be available below in the show notes. And how do we stay in touch with you on social media?
So the best thing is to connect with me on Instagram or Facebook at this point, and YouTube. But it's just Inna Seagall author. I think, yeah, Inna Seagall author.
Okay, perfect. And before we sign off, final tip. Like what is, like the big juicy tip, the one that is like worth the big bucks. So can you share that with us here today?
The biggest thing, which is often the most simplest, I think, is to connect to your body. You need to slow down and make time. And this is, most of us are kind of time poor because we choose to focus our attention and everything on things that, the doing and doing things for everybody else. And it's so, so important in terms of connecting and exploring your body that you slow down and that you meet yourself, that you're interested, that you're open to the insights that show up for you and that you honor them. And I always say to people, one last thing, I know it's not my tip, but any changes, any transformation that you have, if you celebrate it, you'll heal much faster.
I love that. That was perfect cherry on top. Yes, that is something that I definitely agree with. So thank you. That was beautiful. And thank you guys for joining us today. This has been another incredible episode of Overcome Yourself, the podcast. And we'll see you next time. Bye. Thanks again for tuning in to Overcome Yourself, the podcast. Stay bold, stay grateful, and keep becoming your best you. For more information and resources from me, Nicole, head over to nicoletuxberry.com/resources. See you next time.